Hi, everyone. Um, Thank you for joining us. I'm Sophie. I'm the CEO in residence at Joy Ventures. Sorry. Okay. At Joy, our mission is to build and fund the next generation of science-backed consumer well-being companies. And that's why I'm excited to bring together this amazing lineup of speakers to dive deep into the trends and emerging opportunities that are driving this exploding industry. If the last year has shown us anything, is that there's never been a greater need or demand for innovation in our space. Yet, as we see it, the product landscape is still very, very much into its infancy. So we see a huge opportunity to bring new products to this fast-growing market. If we look at the mental well-being space alone, we've seen a huge amount of growth in the last couple of years. If in the past mental wellness was perceived as more of a niche segment, today we're seeing increasing interest from institutional investors, with 2020 and Q1 21 being a record year for startup investments. While the growth in this space has been accelerated by rising consumer demand for mental wellness solutions, even before COVID hit the global economy, consumers around the world were starting to adopt well-being tech, turning new products and trends into a health and wellness industry. Hell, we've seen even the rise of unicorns, the first generation products such as Headspace and Calm, which recently reached out the desired status. We're also seeing that stigma associated with mental health is disappearing slowly. More and more public figures are speaking out about their struggle with anxiety and depression and other challenges. No more timely of an example than the conversation happening around athletes' mental health at the Olympics, such as Michael Phelps. Our zeitgeist is shifting fast, and there's an all-time high of people seeking both help for mental health conditions as well as looking towards solutions to help them maintain well-being and emotional resilience in their day-to-day. And while wellness has also historically been a hush-hush topic in traditional healthcare settings, with most healthcare companies reluctant to label their offering as wellness-focused, wellness is becoming an increasingly overlapping layer of the health tech ecosystems, especially as rising costs are making healthcare inaccessible to so many. Ever increasingly, mindfulness, meditation, mental health, and personal health empowerment have clinically proven to improve healthcare. As such, we're seeing wellness companies jumping on the B2B2C model as a key opportunity to scale, partnering with insurance providers, employers, and other enterprises. And Juha from Garmin will touch this on a bit. Companies such as Headspace, Calm, and ClassPass have all recently developed corporate wellness-focused products. Take Calm, for example. They're partnering with Kaiser to provide services free of charge. So before I invite our amazing line of speakers, as I said, to dive deeper into these topics, I'd like to conclude with this statement, which I cannot take credit for, but I wish, but it was a headline of an article published by Harvard. Good genes and genes are nice, but joy is better. Today, we have more evidence than ever before that maintaining well-being, social, physical, mental, is a key factor for longevity, and yet we are just at the beginning. For those in the room who are excited about this space and want to innovate with us, those who have seeded an idea or even a startup, I invite you to reach out to us and join the Joy Ride. Now, without further ado, I want to invite our first speaker, Amit Hoch. Amit has joined Google 7 years ago, and he is the industry manager for the digital health sales team. Before digital health, and even before Google, Amit spent years at gaming companies, mainly where he specialized in performance marketing. Amit, I'm going to stop sharing.
I'll start mine.
And the floor is yours.
Thank you. Let me know if you see my screen. I'm new at Zoom. present it. Are we okay?
Yeah.
Cool. So thank you very much, Sophie, for the intro. As you mentioned, I'm leading the digital health team here in Tel Aviv. Joined Google 7 years ago, so I'll continue to our team's mission. I just move a little bit this annoying screen, just a second. Okay, now I'm set. I'm new to Zoom, so sorry for that, guys. Our team's mission: relentless focus on customer success by bringing them the best Google has to offer. Important for me to start with saying that when I say customer, I mean advertisers. My team is part of the business side, sales side, marketing side of Google. So I'm not an engineer. I'm not going to talk about high-techy stuff, which are super interesting. So first, sorry for the disappointment, but I hope you find my slide, the trends that I'm going to present interesting. I was asked to speak a little bit about the well-being industry, which is a very broad term, very broad industry. So it was really important for me to find the right focus. So since I worked at Google, I searched well-being at Google and saw this definition, which is the state of being comfortable, healthy, or happy, which is very broad definition. So it didn't help me at all. So I proceeded to Joy Ventures website and noticed that in their partners section of the site, 50% of the partners are directly speaking, dealing with stress relief. It's clearly mentioned there in the description. Whether it's via an app, device, service, we're talking about stress relief. So I decided to focus and share some trends around anxiety and what we in Google categorize as stress relief segment, category, industry, vertical, whatever you wish to call it. This is a cloud word of the main terms, the most common search ones, the more frequent one that users are searching for. Take a look at anxiety, for example. It's not only the term anxiety. It can be part of longer search terms such as what is anxiety, anxiety symptom, etc. Same for the rest of the terms here. Important for me to emphasize that most of the trends that you are about to see contains this bucket of terms. This as an anxiety vertical. I'm going to call it like the anxiety vertical in terms of definition. So let's start with a very high level chart trend of anxiety searches across a long time. As we can see that the search volume has doubled in the past 4 years. Last data point is last month with around 200,000 and 200 millions, almost 300 millions monthly searches around the world which deal with anxiety. As you can see, the trend constantly going up. When we work with our advertisers, we try to break the data into segments to find some interesting insights, and I'd like to give you a bit of a taste of the work that we do. So let's start with device breakdown. It's not surprising that most searches are being searched on mobile devices. Around 75% of searches are on mobile devices. Due to that, we have an internal UX, a user experience team that develop a specific playbook for healthcare companies. They break down mobile website into their main components, for example, home/landing page, menus, search boxes within the mobile sites. And for each component segment pillar, they came up with recommendation how the site should be, what the user should should experience the best. One example for that is like prioritizing the CTA of the mobile sites. Since mobile again is super important and it's limited in terms of the space that users see and the messages that companies can send to their users, it's super important to be as precise as possible and focus and let your user know what exactly you want from their life. So these are a few examples from several healthcare companies, and a good demonstration for this element. Again, there's a whole playbook route around that. If it's interesting, my last slide is like my email address. If you wish to learn more a little bit about that, feel free to contact me. I'll show of course, the slide. Moving on to geographical breakdown. We took the same trend line as before and broke it down into searches across the continent, the different continents around the world. As you can see, Europe and North America are at the top in terms of search volume. Asia, Latin America are the mid-tier, and at the bottom of the chart are Africa and Australia. A few interesting, for me at least, takeaways from this slide is first, Europe and North America, almost on par in terms of search volume, but complexity in Europe in terms of regulation and localization for advertiser companies makes it really hard to expand their activity over there. This is why, not surprisingly, North America, US mostly, and Canada are the go-to market for most of the companies. Africa and Australia, it was really surprising for me as well to see them both with the exact same search volume around anxiety. Again, everything is around anxiety. Africa has a population of over 1 billion people, while in Australia there are around 25 million people there, and the volume is exactly the same. Maybe can reflect something about the gap between developing and developed countries. Not sure, I don't want to go too deep into that, but something to think about it. Regarding the mid-tier, mostly Asia and Latin America, due to their volume and volume of searches, we can see that they drive most of the growth of the category. We compared H1 this year, January to June 21 versus the same period of time in 2019. We wanted to see the trend over a longer period of time to see the growth rates. We see that both Asia and Latin America, also Africa, but in a lower base, are around 70% growth, while Europe, North America, and Australia, as you can see, are between 30 to 40%. Moving forward, as I mentioned, since I work mostly with advertisers, a little bit, one slide, I want to go too technical around ads investment around this vertical. This is an indexed chart that combines both search trend, the blue light trend line, and the ads investment trend, which is the dark blue line. As you can see, both, since it's index chart, both started at the same point. This is an indication to understand the growth rates of each ads investment or searches. Up until May, mid-year, last year, to 2020, the pace was kind of the same pace. But since the investment around advertisement in search, in Google search, was accelerated. Obviously, COVID had to do with it. More companies got into the field. It means that a budget were expanded and new companies started to advertise. Again, this is a developing vertical. And we believe the trend will proceed since growth continues, and of course, user demand. We'll proceed a little bit to non-anxiety trends to reflect a little bit how users take their well-being into their own hands. I'll give here 3 different examples. I'll start with this 24/7 approach, in which users are constantly try to track what they eat, how they sleep, how many steps they do on a daily basis due to many apps wearable technology that is very commonly today, searches in Google. So the example that I added here is this trend of how many calories of anything. Like it could be how many calories in a banana, in anything else, any type of food. So we see the growth in the past 3 or so years that grew massively in the past year. If you compare January this year, 2021 to 2020, we see a 30% more searches of how many calories per a specific type of food. And we see that during the year, there was like increase in searches around COVID, I guess. It impacted quite about this type of searches, declined and spiked again like every year in January, I guess, after holiday season. Right now it reaches an average of 7 million searches a year. Even the search result page for Google is tailored specifically for this type of searches, meaning that it's very commonly a search category, and again, users find it very useful. Again, 89 calories in a banana, if someone ever wondered. Proceeding me versus benchmark, users tend to understand what are the norm levels of several conditions. For example, you can see on the left-hand side example of searches, normal blood pressure. They wish to understand what is normal in order for them to understand if they're above the benchmark or below the benchmark. As you can see, there was a big lift in this type of searches in the past year. Before March 2020, there was a 700,000 average monthly searches of this specific type of searches. Specifically, we're talking about the US here. And since then, we're at the round of 900,000 monthly searches, which is a huge uplift in such a relatively short time. Again, really represents something about what how users behave. Last example about prevention terms, search queries. Users don't wish to wait for bad things to happen to them. They wish to be more proactive, and it reflects in this type of searches how to prevent, for example, diabetes, dementia, cancer, whatever. And we see that this category is constantly growing. This year is a 20% growth rate over last year's. And we checked like even in previous years, it's a constant growing category, which means users, again, wish to be more proactive on their well-being. That's it from my side. I hope you find this example interesting. Again, as I mentioned, it's hard in a relatively short period of time to go too deep, and I hope I gave a bit of a taste of the type of insights that we can provide. For further questions asked, feel free to contact me. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Amit. Yeah, so please feel free to contact Amit, but also you can submit your questions in the Q&A at the bottom, and we'll address them at the end of the webinar. So our next speaker is Juha Vilanen. Yeah, I practiced. Juha is the head of B2B and Garmin EMEA emerging markets, mainly focusing on wearable payments and digital health. He works with financial institutions, health tech innovators, from lifestyle management over insurance to healthcare. But Juha, and this is, I think, this made a huge impression on me, is also a co-founder of the school health platform Move It, with a goal on promoting physical activity and well-being of elementary school children. And for that, I salute you. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Amit, for the very interesting insights on Google within this domain. And I will also try to share my screen. And I hope you can see something.
Yes.
Okay. 15 minutes, as Amit said, it's an impossible way to go through everything where it has the word well-being. But my goal would be to spend the time. It might be that Garmin is not so well known as Google is. If you can go to Google Garmin, then you have the first search results of Garmin. But I would spend a little bit of time telling them who is Garmin and what do we do. I define the well-being a little bit in a more holistic way than anxiety or mental health as such, but that obviously that's an impact. But in my presentation, well-being is a holistic concept of that, and then I will use concrete examples of what we do in this, as Sophie called, in the enterprise field or B2B field. So I think it's a good continuation from what Amit started, especially the search in prevention, 20% plus on preventive searches shows that the overall health awareness and fitness awareness of people has been increasing all the time, and I just can state that we have noticed that also on our side. Well, first of all, Garmin, more than 30 years old now, founded by Gary and Min in the US, and we are an engineering company, consumer electronics company, and we have, I don't know, you might know Garmin from the watches, but you also might know Garmin from your boat. So we have 5 segments, from automotive, fitness, outdoor, marine, and aviation. So we are a very broad company in terms of engineering skills and different kinds of business in environments. But we are, in the first, primarily, we are a consumer electronics company. And it's good to remember this as we go further into the different kinds of B2B examples, because sort of the integration of Garmin into different kinds of segments is embedded in our company from the structural point of view. And we are doing well. We are doing really well. And as Amit mentioned about the 20% increase of the searches relating to prevention, we can say that the last year was our best year in terms of revenue and results. Obviously, many gyms were closed, and people started running and obviously needed running watches. People started cycling and needed cycling products, and we have all of them. So we also noticed that. So the awareness and interest of people has been increasing heavily. On top of the engineering and developing our products and features in-house, we have in the recent years we have also been acquiring companies to help us to make our products better, and tags for bike products, indoor trainers, FitPay for wearable payments, First Bit Analytics for heart rate analytics, and such are examples of the acquisitions Garmin does into, to be better prepared to serve the customers and users. I don't know how many of you are wearing Amit's watch. I just saw it a bit. It's an Apple Watch, but I don't know. But I will focus on the wearables because the wearables are the source of the health data and biometric data. So I will focus on that. If you don't know, visit Garmin.com and have a look at the broad variety of wearables on our site. So basically, we have a purpose-driven design principle that we can serve myself, my son, my wife, and my grandmother. We all have different kinds of needs and hobbies or requirements, and we have a wearable product for all of these groups. So we have a huge amount of wearable products, from the hardware as such and the features that they serve. So mostly Garmin is known in the athlete segment, triathletes, marathon runners and such. But more and more we have very, let's say, the wellness lineups is providing health metrics that have been increasing heavily in the last year. And in the middle, even the surfers with the solar charging class in a watch is something new to us. So have a look at our site and at the product variety what we have. But let's then start the journey towards the actual topic, the health and well-being and such. And independently of the hardware as such or the sensors as such, we have our watches provide obviously different kinds of health metrics, biometric data, activity data. And as we are talking about the B2B side of this or enterprise side of this, it's important that this data can be used for building employee well-being programs or enabling health insurance to build something, or healthcare stakeholders like HMOs to build programs. So how do we enable our ecosystem, our partners to utilize that data for their populations? So I think, as I mentioned, the 5 segments. So we have an inbuilt system of an open ecosystem of various kinds of interfaces and SDKs for third-party companies, our partners, to get access to the data. We talked about anxiety or mental health. We can, just an example, that we have more and more partners who utilize, have interventions for different domains of mental health and utilize the metrics of our wearables to build programs for these. I think the most popular, you can go visit developer.garmin.com to have a look at these, but our Garmin Connect developer program and the health SDKs provide different kinds of options for companies to get access to data and then build their own programs. But I think this is also on top of the broad variety of wearables. I think this is unique on the market and it's open. And then I just, without going to the engineering slides of what the APIs do or the SDKs do, I'm just going to show you a few examples from the enterprise or B2B environment. So remember that Garmin is a consumer electronics company where we as individuals can go to any store or shop and buy a watch for us, depending on what we do as a runner or just health-aware person. But here, and then focusing on examples where we are facing a larger population of people, groups of people, rather than the individual only. And then I hope that these will clarify a little bit where our activities in the B2B or enterprise field are. So first of all, I start with this, with professional sports and team sports, because obviously that's where we are very strong in sports and athletes like our products. But together with this company called Firstbeat Technologies, we have created basically a bundle of a platform for teams of different kinds, like Bundesliga teams, professional soccer teams, basketball teams, ice hockey teams. The players, the individual athletes are using our watches, but the data is then used and fine-tuned by the Firstbeat Technologies platform. And the Firstbeat is using our activity API and health API to get the data and complement with other data from the team. So this is the first step into how the evolution on our side from the individual towards larger group is going. Then the next one, another bridge this is an Israeli company called Zone 7. I don't know, many of you might know them, but they also originate in the athlete field using AI for injury prevention for the athletes and teams. But during the pandemic now, we are actually still running this program, but we utilize this platform and our wearables for the medical staff in Israeli hospitals, because the burnout rate under the COVID prevention, COVID situation was rather high. So together with Zone 7, we created a program just where we try to prevent the burnout to happen. So we were following the stress levels of people, heart rate and sleep data, to help the hospitals to take care of their people. And this is, let's say, we come from sports to employee well-being and health, actually. And this is a very exciting example from Israel in this case. Further down to the road in the employee health and well-being, I took this example now because there are lots of purely digital apps and platforms that are sold to corporate employers for different kinds of employee challenges, well-being campaigns and such. But I took this one because it's Hintsa Performance is combining a human element of personal training and digital platforms. So they are using the digital channel to bring the knowledge and experience of trainers and coaches to digital platforms and utilizing Garmin wearable data on that. And they are coaching individual Formula One drivers, but also then employees and top management of companies. And again, here, they actually call it well-being is a core of performance. That's what the sort of philosophy of this company is about. So as you mentioned about the mental health, they try to combine the mental health aspects, nutrition, physical activity, sleep, all into this core package of them. And then the validation is coming from the Garmin watches in this case. And again, using our health API and the activity API for this. Check out Hintsa Performance and Garmin. I think it's a very exciting and rare example of where human and digital elements are used. Then from well-being, I think for us and any of the consumer wearable manufacturers, the real serious medicine and healthcare is a difficult topic because quite often our products are compared or even tried to be regulated with medical devices. And I just have to say here that our devices are not medical grade devices that you would see in a hospital, and doctors, physicians would be making diagnosis based on them. But we are seeing more and more programs in the real serious healthcare environment where our devices are used as complementary elements, complementary instruments to those you have at the hospital, because the consumer wearables are nice products and you like to wear them all the time. So it's not just one time you go to a doctor and take your pulse ox or the ECG, but you wear them every day, you wear them perhaps 24 hours, and you get more and more data that is showing trends and complementing that punctual information. And this is a challenging area, and in that said, the future will show that how regulated will this remain. But at the moment, we are seeing a large increase in this field. And again, here, two examples. I start with the Tel Aviv University, which is an interesting one. I think this was one of the first ones in the region, that there are 5,000 participants in the study, mainly elderly people, and the aim is here to detect respiratory infections in the early stage, because these people are not in a hospital, they are belong to risk groups, and the researchers are using our wearables, pulse ox, heart rate variability, and sleep data to try to find and identify the risks of early the infections. And the other one is on Cyprus. It's a pharmaceutical study for a cancer therapy, the new cancer therapy, where they don't know what's the impact of the therapy. So in this case, our wearable data is used to optimize that therapy and try to find the way of doses and such. And again, the reason that they selected us was that we have an open ecosystem. They have different ways of getting the data, and then people like to wear them all the time. And that's complementary function here was one of the key issues. So finally, I'm not quite sure in different countries, different kinds of insurance policy systems. Like in the Nordic countries, you most likely wouldn't see anything like that. In Central Europe, in the US, you would, again, and in Asia, you would see this quite a lot. I believe in Israel is that the HMOs are taking part of this insurance field. But this is already a few years old, still evolving program with reinsurance company SCOR. This is one of the big reinsurance companies. And together with them, we have developed a program called BAM. It's a biological age model, where basically the insurance policyholder is encouraged to live a healthier life, and then based on their biological age. So you have a lower age or higher age depending on how you live, and our wearable data is giving the input, complementary input to this. What it means that the underwriting, that the policy as such is dynamic. It's not just everything. You go to an insurance company, you are looking for health insurance. It's not one-stop shop. And now you are this old and you have this risk group, but it's dynamic. So it is changing based on your biological age. And this is obviously, it's motivating people to live a healthier life because they get benefits from their insurance. And again, for the insurance company, they know better where they policyholders are. And this is a similar approach can be seen in both in health insurance as such. As said, in Israel, it could be the HMO, and more also on the life insurance, where the insurance companies are sharing the benefits. So I am almost there. And then you can ask me the questions in the chat or contact me per email. But I just want to remind you about the sort of the well-being or health and fitness and B2B opportunities we have. If there are opportunities you see in both the enterprise segment or the insurance segment or then the healthcare segment, then remember the portfolio, the ecosystem, and the APIs, SDKs that enable this. And we as an engineering company are pretty pragmatic in terms of how we approach these. We have to take case by case and then try to see what works here. So that was it from my side. Thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Juha. So last and not least is Lihi. Segal. Lihi is the serial entrepreneur, business leader, and the founder of DayTwo, which brings precision health solution to the market based on gut microbiome science and artificial intelligence. So take it, Lihi.
Okay. And we just share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen? I didn't hear that. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, great. So first of all, thank you for the invitation to speak today. I will walk you through the DayTwo journey until today, because I think it's a great use case of transitioning from B2C to B2B, which is a lot of the discussion here today. So just before we dive into the go-to-market, I want to briefly explain, or maybe remind to some of you, the solution or the problem that we are addressing. The core problem is that people respond differently when they're eating the same food. And we know that one-size-fits-all diets don't work. So this is an example of 3 different people eating the same exact bowl of oatmeal. And you can see that their blood sugar response in the 2 hours after they eat the oatmeal can vary. Carl has a certain spike, Mary is great, and Phil is spiking differently in a more delayed way. The reason we're looking at blood sugar levels after eating is because it is one of the more important metrics of understanding if a food is healthy for us or not. It's not the only metric. Of course, you need to look at nutrients and macronutrients, but it is a very important factor because elevated blood sugar level, even in healthy people, has been shown to be a risk factor for all the various diseases. Of course, all the metabolic disease, the diabetes and prediabetes, hypertension, but also cancer and mental illnesses, overall mortality. So when you're looking at how to eat in a healthy way, you should do it in a way that is not spiking your blood sugar levels. Unfortunately, when we try to just look at the food and understand if it's healthy or not, it just doesn't work. As we see here, same food can be considered healthy for some person and not healthy for another. But what we found in the data is that although the response is personalized, we're able to combine the oatmeal with different foods, and the combination, which is also personalized, can help us get people into control. So for Carl, adding walnuts, or for Phil, it's blueberries. Complex meals can be much better than simple food. And again, this is all personalized. But just saying that the people respond differently is not enough. That has been seen even before the clinical trial that was done by the Weizmann Institute. I should have mentioned, DayTwo is based on technology that was developed by the Weizmann Institute. And just saying that people are different is clearly just stating what the data shows. Unfortunately, what we need to do is understand what's healthy for one person and not healthy for the other. And over the year, this was an attempt in various ways. For example, eat according to your blood type. If the audience is old enough to remember that best-selling book, trying to look at 4 different blood groups, of course, 0 scientific efficacy. People are trying to do it just based on DNA, and again, very little scientific evidence to that. The scientists at the Weizmann Institute for the first time showed that they were able to use a machine learning algorithm that collected a lot of data on thousands of people today with DayTwo, and just run a machine learning algorithm and build a predictive model that now knows how to predict for every person what would be the right food in order to balance blood sugar levels. And we're talking about complex meals. It's very much based in science. As I said, we started with it started with the Weizmann Institute. We exclusively licensed the technology. We showed through the Mayo Clinic. I'll talk a little about that when we talk about the US, but it was important for us to show the applicability of the science in the US when we were trying to start selling in the US. We recently showed it in Japan. And we were also recently recognized by the NIH as the basis of a $150 million 10-year precision nutrition project. So the science is solid. The product itself, on the technology side, is more or less the same, wherever we go. Always starts with a welcome kit that's sent home. This is fully remote telehealth. That welcome kit will always include the gut microbiome test, which is one of the ways we are able to pick up signals in the machine learning algorithm and know what's different and right for each person. We collect all this information, we run it through the machine learning algorithm, we display this on the mobile app so people will walk around, scan the foods, get a score from 0 to 9.9, and are able to look at any menu in the US, for example, pull it up and see the scores on the menus, and they can also just build their own meals and recipes with whatever they want and then check the score being the predictive blood sugar response to the food that they're about to eat. All this is followed, and this is where it does vary across territories and business models. It can be just the app, it can be a dietitian that's just giving one call, for example, on our B2C channel in Israel, which is now more or less closed, but on that channel, we had just one dietitian call for onboarding. We are launched through Clalit, the HMO in Israel, and so they offer 2 calls. We're now launching with Maccabi next month. They're actually doing this for people with type 2 through dietitians and multiple dietitian visits throughout the year. And in the US, it's a total different multi-year program, continuous support, which we'll talk about in a minute. So as we were looking into our go-to-market, we identified 4 phases, and I'll walk you through them. One, the first one, let's get early adopters. Let's just get consumers, athletes. As I said before, balancing blood sugar levels is applicable for healthy consumers. And Amit, I think we talked to you more about that aspect, about the wellness side, when we talked to Google in the beginning and worked with you. So we were really looking to launch as fast as possible. We got the technology from the Weitzman. We collected a lot more data, but then we just wanted to get out into the market and start learning, which is what we did. So it's always cash pay. Nobody's subsidizing this at this point. People are just paying out of pocket. But it was really just a step for us because the real business model is focused on B2B, and we'll touch on this why. But at this point, we're collecting data. The market in Israel actually exploded around us unintentionally. And so we do have tens of thousands of people here on the program, and Clalit and Maccabi. That wasn't really our original plan. And now we're just doing that mostly B2B in Israel. But in the US, we had really some consumers, some practitioners who were offering this through their clinics, like these high-end, wellness people who were very health conscious, the Worried Well. Those were all very important proof points to achieve, to find. And then the next step is going to self-insured employers. The self-insured employers as a bucket in the US, which is for us the main market. Employers are the easier in these 4 phases that I'll show you because they make their decisions. They make their own decisions. They actually take the risk for their employees, whether it's wellness or actual medical costs. They always use a health plan or a carrier or a payer, but they use it as an administrator. The actual bottom line goes to their P&L, which is awful for the CFO, which is where we sell. We go to VPHR or CHRO, and we get in that way, so they will provide this to their employees. Again, even though we offer this for free in the beginning, and you can think of, I'm offering this for free. It's a great program. Why would they not take it? Very difficult to get their attention. They're overworked, very busy. And they also don't care about prevention in the US. And this is a kind of a very bold statement, but I've seen it again and again. These self-insured employers and health insurance as well, people are very unloyal, right? They can be 1 year on this health plan and the next year on another. They can be this year with this employer and that employer. And the employers know that investing in prevention is something that's not going to pay off because they're just handing a healthier person to someone else maybe. What we found the better sale for us was to go into the medical, real expensive metabolic disease, diabetes. Diabetic people cost 4 times more than somebody healthy. They spend tens of thousands of dollars a year on these people's healthcare. So anything that you can do to help them, make them save money, it's all about a clear ROI. So anyone who's thinking about going into that market needs to really find those diseases that are expensive to the employers and to the payers, and really try to find a way to make those costs go down, and then it can be a great sell. So very difficult to get in. Data is key. So we were continuously asked, what are you based on? Which data do you have? We had data from Israel. Some of it was relevant, some of it was not. Again, we went to people with type 2, and these were healthy people. Mainly in Israel, there were about 50% healthy and 50% people with type 2. But they weren't on a full-blown program. It was really hard to show the data. We also showed the clinical trial with the Mayo Clinic, and that helped to get in. So the clinical trial, the science, the Weitzman, and the early proof points were very crucial to be able to give those free pilots. And then from there, it was just the ability to take employers who had successful business cases and put them on the stage to speak for us, which is what we did over the last year and a half, COVID included. So that was really helpful. Since they got the free pilot, we kind of traded in their support, of course, assuming the results were good, and they were excellent. And then they just started pitching to their employer groups. They have these business groups on health, and they pitch to each other, and they share programs that are successful. And this was really the best entry point. So now we're at the stage where we're going to employers and health plans for fully funded programs. They're paying thousands of dollars a year to us because what we do is actually show them that they get the return on their investment. And then the fourth stage that we see, but we are still not there, and it's a more difficult stage, is how you get written into the health plans for reimbursement. Again, the employers and the self-insured employers can take the decision because it's on their dollar. They're taking the risk. In case of number 4, Medicare and Medicaid are programs for the poor and the elderly in the US. It's on government funding, and this is the next phase. I just do want to say that we're touching on already on Medicaid, even sooner than what we thought, because health plans have programs for Medicaid. So we're going through the health plans that we already have contracts with, and then tapping into government funds that way. I see I'm reaching the end, so I will just quickly run through this. The transition from B2C to B2B to C, again, from direct to employers, we had to adjust what we were selling, right? The product market fit was also about what the offering was. So we moved from an app and just one call on the dietitian side to a full solution. It's a multi-year program. They have multiple touch points with a coach, a health coach, a dietitian, depending on the needs. There's group sessions, but there is continuous support throughout the year. That was a crucial point. As I said, we moved from wellness to metabolic disease. So we are now on type 2 and clinical obesity and fatty liver, and really the disease that are costing tens of thousands of dollars to their employer, and they're carving out a few thousands of dollars a year for us. And this, again, the last point is that we moved from the one-time revenue in Israel. It's just like this one-time sale. It's very hard to find lifetime value in consumers who will pay continuously. Not impossible. I'm not saying there's companies out there who are successfully doing it, but they are, I believe, the exception. To find a recurring revenue model, again, if you show your ROI and you show this over time, you can move into the recurring revenue, even in these digital solutions. So to summarize, today this is what we're saying. We provide a food as medicine telehealth solution based on the gut microbiome that enables a path to remission for people with metabolic disease. Thank you. Questions in the Q&A session?
Yeah, cool. So thanks for that. So we have a question here actually for all of you, our panelists. I'm going to read it out loud. Someone is asking, he would love to hear what do you think about the future of well-being in regards of relationship of B2B and B2C? Might the implication be different approaches to each? I think we touched that in your last session. And the last question is, given that most of what you're discussing is based on data and or science, what do you think is important to translate to simpler terms for the average Joe at the wellness industry grows? Amit, do you want to take this maybe?
Sorry, trying to unmute. It's a tough question because we're not dealing with simple products. as far as from where I come from, when I work mostly with marketeers in our ecosystem, I didn't mention a word about YouTube, which is a whole different ecosystem which is exploding. I try to keep the focus on search, on trends, things that are more straightforward, but people go to YouTube more than ever. It boosted last year. People watch it over TV, over mobile devices, across anything. And I think to approach solutions, to use the new, the rising ecosystem of influencers is a key here. I hope I'm answering the relevant answer to the question, but I think that since the services, the products are not that straightforward, I think there are elements that can approach and simplify these to the mass market, at least. I think this is the trend. The trend goes there.
Thanks. Yeah.
Can I also try to answer, because then the anonymous attendee questions, B2B, B2C, and then the simpler terms questions I can see.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So from Garmin's point of view, well, we are a consumer electronics company. As everything we do, we have to serve a consumer, and so it's both ways. So basically, the more consumers like our products, and the more they use, more they are, the more relevant that comes to societies and populations. So, and the more relevance they provide for any kind of a B2B actor, HMOs, insurance companies, employers, and such. So, so that's definitely from our point of view. But obviously, we as a company also, of course, proactively speak with all the B2B actors within this field. But our core concern is to make our products better for the consumers, and make sort of clarify what we were investing quite a lot of time and resources in developing the features to make it easier for people to understand why is it relevant for me why is heart rate and what's resting heart rate, why is it relevant for me, what is stress meaning to my life, what is the sleep, what are the sleep sequences, why it's important for me. So I think this science and data and B2B, B2C, we focus on the consumer, make it easier and more relevance. That's why they use our products, and then the relevance in the B2B world grows as well.
We have a question. Thanks. We have a question from me, our CEO, Joy. So she's asking, how did you approach the employers and health plans? So maybe we'll start with you, Juha, and then Lihi can answer as well.
How did we called them? No. Well, both ways. Sort of, we get approached quite often as these employers and insurance companies are planning something like this. But obviously, we are very active in terms of. We have since 4 years we've been organizing a so-called Garmin Health Summit where we bring these B2B elements in together. We invite these particular companies there. We have a global sales and business development force for this, so we quite proactively go after them, and we've been growing this kind of a network since 4 or 5 years now, and to be known also in this field.
Lihi?
Yeah, we don't have like a huge team and a lot of funds, so it's more startup mode. But what we're doing, there's a few channels, and I'm in the US. Okay, in Israel, it was, I was on every stage, and Professor Ron Segal was on every stage, and all that. So leave Israel aside, it's a very small market. Everybody knows everyone. It was relatively simple. In the US, it's very different, of course, very different scale. So we did direct marketing. So there's lists of 5 positions in every company that touch health benefits or wellness. It's CFO and CHRO and VP benefits, and there's just a few titles, and then you get all these public lists. Well, not public, but somebody's selling you the list, and then you approach them, and it's an SDR model, just like you would do, and then you would mail them, and then there's a response rate, right? And we tried to get some traction there, and then get on the phone with them, and then hand it over to the sales team. That's one way. It's an effective way, but not the this is kind of how you start out before you get any traction. And then the other way is to, as I mentioned before, in the US, there's employer business groups on health. There's coalitions. They're spread. There's in the East and the West and the Southeast, and there's all over. And they are sharing their stories. So they're like groups of 20 employers in the area, and they will come in and get pitched by startups like us or by other solutions. They give you an opportunity to do webinars and to present those innovative solutions, and they also sharing stories with each other, which, as I mentioned before, was a very big game changer because we had our customer pitch for us. The third way is through benefit consultants. Benefit consultants, there's like Aon and Towers and Willis Towers. There's a few of them. Their sole job is to advise the employers on those innovative solutions. So HR departments just don't have that information. They go, they pay a retainer. And if you get in front of the benefit consultants, they can bring you to multiple employers. It's very difficult to get in, but you get the first one, and then, and having said all that, our first, and then of course there's, once you're growing, your sales executives have their contacts and they're able to march you in. Having said that, our first, employer was the CEO of a health system with 30,000 employees, and he was the wife of someone who saw us in some conference she's a dietitian. We were pitching the American Diabetes Association. She became very excited. She gave it to her husband became very excited, and then that was our first customer. But so we did a lot of, thought leadership and bringing the science for the better part of the first 2 years in the US. And that paid off as well.
May I add one thing here? Because that's exactly what I forgot to say, that because we as Garmin, we don't have anything to offer to insurances or employers on our own. We only have the hardware. And that's why we have the ecosystem that enables companies like Lihi's to utilize our data, our wearables in the package. And that's why, we have several thousands of startup companies, blue chips that you use our, and that's a package. That's a joint approach. That's an ecosystem approach on this field, because no one can serve everything on their own, except maybe Google. But otherwise, the startups and the health tech companies are, I think, even bigger than our own sales force in that field, because, and that's why we serve them. That's why we have an open ecosystem. That's why we try to be known under that field. So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
There's one last question, and it's to you, Amit. You've been asked if you can elaborate a little bit more about influencers.
Yeah, I think it's not YouTube only ecosystem. It's something that is going very spread out, like across Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. It's a very strong way for companies to spread out their brand, product, services, whatever, through a more native approach, instead of, we all know, the regular in-stream ads that we skip while we watch YouTube. And there's a huge ecosystem of content creators in YouTube that create and gather a lot of audiences and followers, and there is a collaboration between brands, companies, and themselves and the influencers. And it's a very, very native way to shout out your message through a more less hard sell approach.
More authentic.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So guys, I want to thank you all. It was, for me, it was an eye-opening session from different aspects, and you all delivered and more. So I hope our crowd out there has enjoyed as I did. And of course, all of you invited to reach out to our panelists, and of course, reach out to us and Joy. You're welcome, and we're going to expect your calls. So thank you, guys, and
thank you.
Thank you very much.
And stay safe. Bye-bye.